Hello and welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast, brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm delighted to be your host, Sarah Travers. And throughout this series, I'll be speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth, and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today in the studio, I'm joined by Adrian Markey, Managing Director at Adrian Markey Chartered Accountants. Adrian, you're very welcome to the podcast studio. How are you today?
Good, sir. Thanks.
Good. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Adrian and his business. Adrian is a chartered accountant and based in Warren Point here in Northern Ireland. He qualified as an accounting technician in 2010 and then as a chartered accountant in 2013. Since setting up the firm in 2016, he's been twice nominated for Accounting Excellence Awards. In 2017 for New Firm of the Year and in 2018 for the Practice Pioneer Awards. Now, let's face it, where would entrepreneurs be without an accountant to keep us right from the get-go? So we'll be talking to him all about that world. But more recently, Adrian has turned his attention to the role of AI in business and how this is likely to impact the landscape of work in the coming years. So very interested to talk about that. And he actually spoke at the Northern Ireland Business Conference in September last year about how AI can help businesses and why it can't be ignored. So, Adrian, lots to talk about here today, but tell me a little bit about the man. Who is Adrian Markey? Tell us about yourself.
Where do you start with a question like that? Listen, I'm just a man from Warren Point who fell into accountancy sort of by chance. Happened to like it, happened to enjoy it. Turned out I was pretty good at it. And then just over the years that turned into starting a firm and building up a portfolio of clients. So
when you say you fell into it, how did you fall into it?
So years ago, I used to do a bit of music about the town, and in 2007, I met a girl, and about 2008, when I was still sort of gigging, I noticed sort of as an early symptom of the financial crash that was coming, that the pubs and clubs were getting quiet, and it was harder to find gigs, and it was harder to make money. And at the time, this girl was doing accountancy, and I asked her, what's that like? She says, yeah, I like it. So I thought, look, I'll give that a go. And now we're married, two chartered accountants in the house.
Fabulous.
So it's sort of gone full circle now, yeah.
I'm glad I asked that follow-up question.
Yeah.
There's always a story, and sometimes it involves a little bit of romance too. Okay, so you thought, what's that like? I'll give it a go. You obviously liked it. It's not for everyone, but as I said at the start, accountants, you know, there's nothing certain in life. What is it? The quote says, apart from death and taxes.
Taxes, yeah.
We have to keep ourselves right. But okay, so you saw that you liked it, you had a flair for it, obviously, and then you started your own business. Yeah,
well, I done my training in an accountancy practice, and from there tried out a few different roles within industry. So I always talk about the difference between working in practice and working in industry. Is practice is breadth and industry is depth. So when you're working in practice, you're working with all sorts of clients across a broad spectrum of industries, and that's what I love about it. With working in industry, you go very deep on one particular sector, you know, whatever the business is that you're working on, and you kind of know all the intricacies of that. I didn't like that as much. I preferred the variety, certainly, of, you know, one day doing books for, you know, a multi-million pound, you know, marketing firm, and the next day it's Joe the farmer, you know, and you've kind of that variety and those different people and that variety even in your diary, because working in industry is quite structured. You kind of know the third Tuesday of every month what you're doing, and it gets very repetitive. So I tended to gravitate back towards practice. So I kind of phased my way out of industry. I was working for a construction company at the time, and that was when the side hustle, the side project of the practice kind of built up a little bit, and I kind of reached this tipping point where it required more of my time and attention than the other. So it just meant taking the jump and,
so you made the leap.
Hoping for the best. Yeah.
And then, the side hustle was going on, but do you remember your first client? Do you remember, that first person?
Yeah, first client was actually a good friend of mine from just next door where we are here, Graham Finnegan, who I think was on the podcast as well. Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny how it went full circle as well, because back when I was a musician, that's how I met Graham. He was looking, when he opened Grounded, he was looking to have music in Grounded. So I started out doing that, doing a few gigs for him, and I ended up organising all the gigs for Graham, because he'd ring me on a Friday and be like, I forgot to book someone. Can you come down and do it? And I was like, I can't, but I know someone that can. And I was like, do you want me to just look after this for you? So yeah, Graham was client number one then whenever I get into the accountancy. So it was a good client to have. He's well known, and it has that bit of gravitas. I think that when you go to another client, that you can point to them and go, look, I'm not just playing about here. I've got a decent business here who's put their faith in me, and that's always something that
That's massive, isn't it? And
faith,
yeah, absolutely. And then I suppose word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yes. I was quite what would you say? When I started out my own firm, I had a list of things that I wanted to do where I felt other firms weren't doing it well, or I want to do things this bit differently. Can
you remember that list?
Social was definitely one of them. And very early on, I was picking up clients from Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and just not by being salesy, because I don't think that's a good way to go about getting someone's trust, or getting someone to trust you. It was about being conversational. It was about putting out content as well. That I used to always say that I would put up blog posts and I would say to people, I don't need you to understand what I'm writing about here. I need you to believe that I know it. And if you can do that, that kind of is a touch point then for you to say, well, I've seen his content, I know who his clients are, I'll pick up the phone, I'll give him a call and see what he has to say. And for me then, it was always that face-to-face with the client, of having the meeting with them, talking about what their pressure points were, where they were struggling with their business, how we could help, to what extent we could help. Do you want us to do everything for you, or do you just want to come into us once a year and we'll keep you compliant?
Right.
And having that flexibility in the service that you provide, I suppose, to sort of cater for what people need. You're not going to upsell everybody to, we'll be your shadow finance team.
That's really interesting as well, because I don't, I probably was one of those people that just wanted to be kept compliant. But actually, if somebody came to me and said, did you know, or I could do, or there's more here, or do you want to have a chat about something? Actually, that would be so useful.
It is. And that's, to me, that's where, in those meetings, that's where the magic happens. Because we can go and do the numbers and we can send you a copy of them. But when we sit down and talk to you about them, that's where things come out of the woodwork. And it could be something innocuous about, I was looking at a house recently and we go, hold on, you need a mortgage, therefore you need particular earnings levels, you need to show affordability for a mortgage. What can we do within the accounts to help that, or what can we advise you to do to plan for that, whether it's saving for a deposit or, doing a quick check on whether you would get a mortgage in the first place. And it's small innocuous comments sometimes that'll kind of spark something that you need to plan for. I joke with clients as well, semi-joking, if you're going to get married or have kids, you need to tell me first, because there's just so much sort of planning around that from a tax perspective. Some clients have taken me seriously on that, and like back there before Christmas, we had a client saying, we haven't told the parents yet, but we want to let you know. Well, especially with the cost of weddings
these days,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so talk to the accountant first. And what would you do then at that point?
It's more just having an awareness, because you can look at a set of numbers and draw some conclusions, but unless you know something about the people behind the numbers and what their plans are, if you have kids, so many things in life change, because even from a financial point of view, that's a cost. Not to talk about kids as a cost, but they are.
They're very costly.
If you're planning for college or things like that, or maybe the child might be the catalyst for we need a bigger house and things like that. So it's just having an awareness so that you can plan for it and factor that into my thinking.
So you're not a spontaneous person then, Adrian?
Me?
Yeah.
Probably not enough.
Yeah.
Is anybody spontaneous enough?
No, but there's that level of risk as well about big life decisions and doing things, and I'm really interested because you've started your own business, so you're an entrepreneur as well. In terms of staff, how many people do you have working for you now?
So we've got 5 at the minute. I think people have often said, "Oh, how big will you get?" And I always say, "I'll keep going until it gets uncomfortable." I think that's just, I don't want to, I'm ambitious enough in so much as I don't want to limit myself, but at the same time, I don't want to put myself in an early grave with it either.
It is stressful at times, I'm sure. And yeah, it's really good, I suppose, to have an exit strategy or even get to that point. Are you at that point now where you're working on the business rather than in the business?
Yeah, and that's a lesson in itself in how to delegate first and foremost, because
and if your name's above the door,
my name's above the door,
do people want you, and how do you let go?
Yeah, that was difficult. There's only one way to do it, and that's to do it. So essentially, and listen, I've been very lucky in that I've got some fantastic staff there. So I've just started in the last couple of years probably going, right, that's yours. You look after that. Come to me with any issues or problems, but I trust you that you won't drop the ball on it. And in fact, I trust you that you'll do a really good job of it. I'd like to think I'm going to do a better job at it, but I don't have the time. And in reality, you'll probably do it better than I will.
And that's a great lesson, isn't it? And it requires a mindset shift, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For the entrepreneur, the person who started this. This is your baby. This is everything. So much is about trust and getting the right people in who will not only do as good a job as you, but a better job than you. And even the potential of that, you could be a little bit, whoa, that's a bit dangerous if they're better than me.
No, I'd be ecstatic if they are, because people will surprise you. People will excel if they're given the opportunity to excel. If you hold someone back and say, no, I'm not going to give that task or that job to you or that client to you, I'm going to look after that because it's so important. If you hand them the big important job, most won't take that for granted, because I didn't take it for granted when the client handed it to me. I realised I had to earn their trust. I had to do a good job on that. I had to impress them. I had to go above and beyond their expectations. And I hope that over the years, we as a team have done that. I think we have. But we'll keep striving to anyway.
Now, you've been nominated twice for the Accounting Excellence Awards. What was that like?
Probably a little anticlimactic.
Oh. The nomination rather than the win.
Way. I didn't win, so that wasn't that was partly anticlimactic. Yeah. But as much as anything, what does it mean? What does being nominated mean? It just means that you were on a short list of people that weren't clients or friends or family. So it was nice, but it was an affirmation that I probably didn't need. Really, I'd rather get the gratitude from a client or a staff member or my friends or my family than a faceless body.
Interesting. And so
I think
in
people
terms
place
of
too much importance on
awards. Okay. Yeah. And what, nominating themselves for awards?
Nominating themselves. And
if it was the client had nominated, it would have been a totally different thing.
Totally. And you see that, that whole thing of like music awards where people go up and say this one really means something because it was voted for by the fans.
Yes, and you get that.
It's that kind of thing where I think a lot of awards at the minute are, you'll win this if you buy a table at the event.
Is that the way you think?
There's a little bit of that in it as well. And again, look, it's something that you can kind of hold out in front of yourself and say, yeah, look, this is the level that we're at now. But to me, it probably holds a little less importance than some other things, than many other things in life, within and outside of business.
Mm-hmm. What do you think then has been your biggest achievement?
Again, I think that's something that's, I like the small incremental achievements, rather than, you do have those sort of moments where you land the big client, or something goes really well for a client that you've helped out on and things like that. And to that extent, we've had moments like that where, we've had clients that have had, millions of pounds of investment or millions of pounds in high profile projects and things like that, and we've been along for the ride. But for me, the achievements are small and incremental. It can be just to come back to the thing of giving staff a task to do, and they kind of go above and beyond. Well, that's something that you've got somebody in here now that can see, that has the passion for something, to want to push on that little bit. And I like seeing those little small things happening, or even just things of clients coming to you and saying, or a new client coming to you and saying, oh, such and such recommended you. And like, that's good, because we didn't know where we stood with that client, whether they were happy with the service or not, and they're actually passing the referral on. So I like the small incremental, slow and steady improvements. I think that's the route to longevity. And
it's quite humble as well when you think about it. You don't take anything for granted, and you don't rest on your laurels, to use two cliches. But
absolutely, and it's something I say to clients quite a lot is, look, thank you for trusting us, because it's a huge thing. Because I know as well, look, from having your own business, you're protective of it, and you don't want to just hand it over to anyone to kind of, your task is to keep us compliant, to keep us out of jail, to make sure we pay the right taxes and all the rest. That's an undertaking. That's difficult to let go of. So absolutely humbling that people would trust us with something so important to them.
And also, when you're working in a small area where you probably know lots of people, there's the whole talking about money thing as well. It's like, here you go, you can see everything.
Yeah.
That's hard too. Or
There's
not? Do you think that people like to go to somebody in their town that they know?
There's a mix. Surprisingly, I was having this conversation with someone before Christmas. I could probably count on one hand, two hands at most, the number of clients that we have in Warrenpoint.
Interesting.
And I'm from Warrenpoint.
Right. Okay. So what does that say?
So it could say any number of things. One is, yes, look, I don't want my next door neighbour knowing that. Or it could be, look, there's lots of great accountants out there. They maybe already have one, and if you're happy with what you have, stick with it. Sometimes better the devil, Yeah. And I think it probably speaks to our marketing and things as well. And like we have a lot of clients beyond Northern Ireland as well. We've quite a lot of clients over in England, a few in Scotland, quite a few down south as well. So we haven't maybe we haven't focused on targeting businesses in and around that area. I don't know. They know we're there, and we're happy to help anyone that needs it. So.
And is it the sense that, my dad used this person and before? Is that a Northern Irish thing that we stick with what we know?
There is a bit of that, yeah. But again, I would always say, and look, it probably plays nicely for me if I can prize you away from your dad's accountant. But there's an age thing, I would think, there as well, in that if you have a young enthusiastic startup that don't want to go to an accountant that's on the cusp of retirement and start talking to them about AI or new tech or all these new things that are coming out, because there's a disconnect possibly between what their strengths are and what the accountant's strengths are. So there's probably a little bit of that as well. But I always say to people, go and talk to 5 different accountants, and whoever you get on the best with that you think will be able to help you, go to them, because they are the person that you want to be able to pick up the phone and go, just want to run something by you.
Yeah.
And you have to have that rapport with them and have that relationship to be able to be frank and open with them, and vice versa.
And especially too, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, many people start small, and there's not much money to go around, and even paying for the accountant at the start is like one of the biggest bills that you might have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then maybe you're on the growth journey, or you're trying to scale, and then suddenly there's the turnover's much greater, but the costs are greater, and all of those things. But really, you can keep people right from the start, as you say, up until the growth kicks in. Exactly,
and being compliant, it's a lot easier to do something in year than to try and go back and tidy up 4 or 5 years. And we do that. Sometimes you get people that get themselves in a muddle and have all these letters coming in from HMRC, and they try to do it themselves. And some people can absolutely do it themselves. They don't need me, right? That's fine. If you don't know the rules, it can be much harder, even just from an administrative point of view of who do I need to register with, what do I need to file, when do I need to file it by, and when do I need to pay. Those are the basics that if you get those wrong, that's when the problems and the fines and the penalties can start mounting up, and that's where the cost really kicks in. So the investment in the accountant should realistically save you money in the long run, if they're good.
And you've also given the advice there to shop around, have those conversations. Don't just point, click, there's somebody, I'll go with them. How do you feel then? This is the opportunity to do the bit of the sales pitch, but how do you set your business apart from everyone else?
I suppose it is that kind of, it's a number of things. It's having options for clients. I think that's important. There is no one size fits all. So it's about sitting with somebody, investing a bit of time in them to understand them, to understand their business, to understand what they want from the business in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And at that point then we can set out a roadmap of, okay, you can do this. Here's this kind of a bare bones minimum that you have to do. Here's a little bit extra that we can help with that would kind of maybe give you a bit more visibility into the business, a bit more insight. Or you can kind of go the whole hog and let's look at wealth management and succession planning and setting yourself up for whatever. The advice that you give to someone is going to differ greatly depending on, if you have someone there that has a business that, look, this is for the kids in 20 years' time, that they'll come in and take it over, you're going to give them very, very different advice to somebody that says, I'm going to go hard and fast at this for a year and then flip it.
Yeah.
It's going to be chalk and cheese, totally different advice you're going to give them for strategic planning, for wealth management, for tax planning and all the rest. So if you don't have the conversation, you're not going to find that out.
And even if you don't quite know where you're going, you can help with that goal setting.
Exactly.
Yeah, ask those pertinent questions.
Yeah,
Get people thinking.
I think a lot of people do that. They'll start a business and kind of go, let's see what happens. And they'll push along, and look, serendipity can come in sometimes and kind of nudge you in the right direction. But I think one of the things that we're quite good at as well is facilitation, in terms of we know hundreds of business people just by virtue of the fact that they're clients. We also know people in banks, we know people in investment, so we're quite good for pointing in the right. If we don't know the answer, we probably know someone that will.
And it seems so complicated out there, and trying to do business at the minute with everything changing in a state of flux, and you're there for the good years and the bad years.
Absolutely. You have to be. You have to be. And listen, COVID was an example of that. It was a really strange time for us. We were busier than ever during COVID. Part of that was because we were bent over backwards to help clients with getting their grant money, getting their furlough claims and all the rest. And we didn't charge a penny for that.
Did you not?
We made the point at the start saying it didn't sit well with me to charge you at a time when you were on your knees.
And you didn't know if any money was coming in at all.
And we didn't know what was happening.
No.
I think I assumed that furlough would last for a couple of months. Therefore, we were happy to look after it, and it went on for about 18 months. But I stuck to my guns and said, "No, look, we're not charging for this."
And did that stand you in good stead, do you think?
Absolutely.
That loyalty.
Absolutely.
That you know what, we're here.
we pretty much doubled our business during COVID.
God, by doing the right thing, even though the right thing was the hard thing.
Yeah, and a lot of that was word of mouth then, where people were struggling. Like, I know stories of accountants that closed their doors and put themselves on furlough during COVID, which blows my mind. Whereas we were doing everything that we could. I was sending out any information that we were getting about grants or about money that was being made available. I was sending it out to clients and non-clients alike, totally indiscriminately, because people needed the help.
And you could work remotely doing that as well.
We work remotely. Well, we were fortunate enough that we were working from home for about 3 months. And then we were back in the office, and we kind of kept all our rules in place. So it was good that sense. And then we always had the option. I'm techie and geeky, so I was always, from day one, I was always able to do remote working when I opened the practice. So it was, COVID came along, it was like, right, we're good to go. From the start. But yeah, look.
Do you still think remote has a place though, or do you like to see people face to face now?
A bit of both. I mean, look, just with the geography of some of the clients that we have to have remote meetings, and occasionally we do try and take the trip over to England to do a whip round and meet a few of them.
Yeah.
No, it absolutely has a place, and even to this day we have staff that'll sort of say, look, can I work from home tomorrow? And that's fine. It's not a problem. You know, the phone. We can put
flexibility and freedom, which is what you were talking about earlier, and just that trust is the bottom line. Okay, you talked about being a geek. You've already mentioned AI. Let's go there, because it is something that scares me. But you know, you're an accountant, but you're big into AI, and you're speaking about AI. So how do the two marry?
I've sort of made them marry. Just I suppose the two things that interest me the most are accountancy, boringly, and tech, maybe not so boringly. The job of an accountant traditionally was do the books. Because of AI, to some extent, that job is being shifted to one side, and the accountant is becoming more of the advisor, the trusted advisor. You know, if the computer can do your accounts, what do you need me for? So that sort of puts the onus on accountants to step up. So
that's what you were fearing?
Not
or is that what's going to happen? The computer will do the accounts? The numbers still have to go in?
Oh, okay. Computers are already starting to you know, there's been apps there for years that you can take a photo of a bill that somebody sends you, and it'll read it for you, and it'll post all the information into the accounts for you. So, you know, historically that was always probably the most expensive part of doing the accounts, because someone had to sit with, you know, 50 bank statements and type them onto a computer so they were in a usable format. Everything's in a usable format now, so let's train the computer how to do this little bit. And then once the numbers are done, they'll be checked, made sure they're accurate, and then that's when the fun starts. That's when you can start using your accountant more, testing them a bit more to see, look, what do the numbers mean now? What does this mean for the next year? What do I need to do, change? How do I adapt? Is there anything there that scares you? Is there anything there that looks promising? Things like that. So that's where all the accountant's know-how should come into play then, and they become more of the advisor rather than the guy that types the numbers onto the computer.
So in fact, instead of seeing less of your accountant, you might get to see more, because the numbers and the data are there and easier to access, and you're not just waiting till the night before you have to pay your bill.
Absolutely.
And say, oh gosh, what's it going to be?
I mean, a lot of people now are using online bookkeeping packages like Xero.
Yeah, we've got that in our business. Yeah.
So pretty much, you know, and I use it myself. So the first 10 minutes of my day is basically getting in and tidying it up for the day before. So I have a real-time P&L. Like, it used to be you'd get a P&L once a year.
Once a year, absolutely.
Whereas now it's there. You can take that data, bend it, twist it, compare this month to last month, this March to last March, you know, and see where you're at. And it's very useful then that if someone rings you and has a question or is panicked about something, that you can just click on, have a look at the numbers and go, well, here's what we can see now, rather than give us 3 weeks till we pull the accounts together and then we look at it. With AI, yes, it's going to have an impact in accountancy and how we do our job for the better, I think. But it's going to infest every single business out there. And there's maybe a little bit of fear about that. I don't think there should be. I think AI is not here to take your job. It's here to take your tasks. It's going to take the repetitive, time-consuming things that you don't like doing anyway.
They're the worst.
Yeah, and it's going to free you up to do more. I think there was a few years ago, I think there was a study of big companies using AI and trying to integrate AI, and 90% of them failed to find any benefit of it. And the 90% that failed were the ones that saw AI as the replacement for the human.
Okay.
You know.
And let's face it, there are people doing jobs in companies that are legitimately concerned because their job was quite menial. Yeah. So those people who are not maybe upskilling or doing more than submitting the numbers or inputting, are they right to be scared?
I don't think so. I think it depends on the mindset of the business owner. If you look at AI and say, right, let's bring this tool in and we can get rid of Susan. She's lazy and she drinks anyway. You know. Well, no, Susan's not lazy. Susan's disenfranchised and she doesn't enjoy her job
She's
because
not challenged.
it's repetitive and it's challenging, and that's why she's drinking at night and coming in hungover in the morning.
Whereas
Susan. If Susan gets to shift that stuff to one side and you as the business owner empower her to do something better that she's capable of doing, you just haven't pushed her that way. You've given her something that you can train a computer to do. So now what are you going to get her to do? And it's an opportunity, I think, for businesses to get the most out of people. You know, I think there are a lot of employees out there in jobs that don't feel valued because the thing they do isn't valuable or deemed valuable, but the person themselves has value in them.
It's really interesting, and a lot of employers will be listening to this. And yes, if you are sitting thinking, oh gosh, we can replace somebody that's just not functioning, your message would really be, think again about that employee. Why are they like that? Before you let them go?
If you're going to put someone onto a building site to do a job, you equip them with the right tools. AI is a tool to equip your employees with and to help them flourish.
So AI can also be seen as the personal assistant that would perhaps
Precisely.
assist those employees that maybe need a little bit more support.
Assist all employees in doing their job better.
Better, okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking outside of the box. A lot of people are complaining they don't have enough people, they don't have the right skills, etc., etc. But AI can, in fact, help the person whose maybe English just wasn't the best, so they can use something now that will help them, their grammar will improve, etc., etc. So, you know, don't see it as a threat, see it as something that could aid the progression of someone else.
Exactly. I think if businesses come with a combined strategy of let's invest in AI and in training our staff, the upside of that is phenomenal. And the upside of AI, this is the thing that probably interests me about it. I was many years ago I got involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain, and for years that seemed like a solution in search of a problem. People were trying to shoehorn it into different platforms and things like that to go, look, we can use this to solve this, and it's still trying to find a fit. AI is a case of think of a problem and we can think of an AI to fix it. This is what AI is doing, though. It's taking everyday problems and finding a way to embed itself in them. So it's totally unavoidable. Mm-hmm. You know, all movements in technology are unavoidable. You know, years ago when the TV came out, people in radio tried to badmouth it. You know, and when the internet came out, everyone's going to lose their minds, and you know, how is this going to... For every leap in technology, there are huge advantages to be found, and some people will try to focus on the negative. You know, the evil that can happen with it, so someone can take your voice.
I was going to say, forget Susan. What about Sarah in this podcast studio?
but listen, someone could, you know, look at the politics behind AI. People are talking about deep fakes. You know, here's a video of Joe Biden slagging off such and such. Yeah, that can happen, but that's not the tech doing that. That's the human. Oh, right. For every piece of technology, if there's a
misuse by the human,
there's a misuse by a human. There was a thing on the radio this morning, and the headline was some government official warns about how AI could, you know, cause havoc because it's going to be used by hackers. It's like, yeah, it's by hackers. It's not the AI doing this. It's the hackers enabling the AI. And for every, you know, piece of kit out there, if you look at it with an evil mindset, you'll use it for evil. You know, you can look at a butter knife as something to spread butter with, or you can look at it as a weapon. That comes down to how you interpret it.
There's a good takeaway.
And you can't. I've never been a fan of restricting tech because you could use that for something evil.
Look at Oppenheimer in the film. Anyway, we'll move on.
Wow,
we're getting very deep here. So you're obviously fascinated by the subject, and you've got a lot to say on the subject. What's next for you and for Adrian Markey Chartered Accountants?
I think it's follow that blueprint of let's keep growing until it gets uncomfortable. We punch above our weight at the minute, and we do great work. I want to keep doing that. I've got some great staff down there that should be able to help with that, take on, more responsibility. We take on more staff, and I'm comfortable knowing that we have the people there that'll be able to train them if I don't have the time to do it. I enjoy what I do, and if I can get that to balance in with my life, then I'm always one for being. It's the pursuit of happiness. That's the North Star for it, and it should be the North Star for every entrepreneur. Not money, not social media followers. Are you content and happy in your own life? And if you're not, something needs to change. And if that's the business, it's the business.
What about your wife? Do you work together?
We work together. She has her own kind of portfolio of clients. She's very construction industry centered. She, it's hilarious. She knows far more about building than I really should. You're sort of, I think, as a man, you're expected to, be good at manual labour and DIY, and I know none of that. And she knows she could build a house. I'm convinced. But she's exceptional at what she does. It's stuff that's way over my head, and I'm interested in tech, and therefore I go deep on that. Construction doesn't interest me as much. Yeah. It does interest her. She's from all her brothers are tradesmen, and she's worked in construction companies before as well. So she's a force to be reckoned with in that industry.
And what do you like doing in your spare time? You mentioned the music at the start. Is he still singing?
No, this is in the car. Less so in the car these days, because I'm just listening to podcasts. So it's good.
What are
news
you listening
for
to apart from the public eye?
Apart from the public eye, I love David Williams. He's got a really interesting take on economics and how it's kind of embedded in every facet of life. The rest is politics. It's really good. Not a subject I thought I'd be interested in 20 years ago, but when it's so impactful to businesses and to tax legislation, things like that, you do tend to follow it a bit more. And I think since COVID, I think everybody's kind of been more interested in what happens in politics.
Absolutely, and in podcasts as well. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And listening for a bit longer to educate themselves, which is, I think, what we really need. So the music's you're not performing, but
not performing. Yeah. Noodling about a little bit at the house, maybe. Aside from that, we've just sort of taken to seeing the world a bit more in the last few years since COVID. So we like our little city breaks and our summer holidays, and
that's what it's all about. It
is, yeah. We were in Barcelona last year, and we're going back now in a few months. Phenomenal city,
wonderful, so beautiful architecture and everything.
It's amazing. Like we sort of, the first day we were there, we kind of walked about for a bit and went, "Nah, it's a big city. What?" And then we turned down a side street and just kept going. And you could be on this tiny little side street, and you turn the corner, and there's a massive cathedral or hall or something there, and it's mind blowing. But it's such a lovely city, and the temperatures make it a little bit more attractive as well. So.
Absolutely. We're recording this in January, and it would be quite nice to be somewhere a bit warmer right now. Adrian, lovely to have you in the studio today. We ask every guest this final question, so I am going to ask you the biggie now, which is about the purpose of this podcast, which is to inspire existing business owners and those ambitious entrepreneurs out there to grow their business by offering insight into the success of businesses such as your own. So what advice would you give people who have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
That really comes down, this comes down to who's asking the question.
Me.
You. What's your business idea?
No, only joking.
I think regret is cancer. Regret is something that will fester inside you for years. So you have to balance that then with the question of, does your current circumstance allow for the risk? If you are in a steady job with 3 kids and a mortgage, that's a tough one to take that leap of going, I'm going to go for this. We are in an era, I think, of abundance. And if you have the work ethic to put the hours in after work to start the first small steps on building your business, do that. And if at some point it gets to a stage where you can take that leap, as people often say, and turn your attention to the business full time, then do that. You know, there are no overnight successes. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen that way. You grow a business in months and years, not in days and weeks. So be ready be ready to put the work in. Ask yourself if you have, and be brutally honest with yourself, have you got what it takes to do this, both in terms of, do you have the time for it? Do you have the talent for it? And I think the most important, do you have the passion for it? Because without that, what's the point? You know, I think it's Simon Sinek talks about the difference between, remember the exact wording of it, but he talks about, you know, if you're working for someone, you feel stressed because you don't have the passion for it. But if you've got the passion for something, you don't feel that stress because it's something that you don't mind putting your time into.
Simon Sinek, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion.
There you go. I knew there was something in there.
Thank you, Google. And thank you, Adrian Markey, for joining me today on the Public Eye podcast. Brilliant conversation, and delighted to be hearing all about your journey and continued success.
No worries. Thank you, sir. And thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing, I think, on shining a light on entrepreneurs throughout the country and beyond. I think it's good to hear people's stories and seeing, you know, I'm sure lots of stories resonate with lots of people, so that could just be sparking something in somebody to take that leap and start that business.
Fabulous. And you've added another great story to the collection. Do check everything out wherever you get your podcasts from. We are nearly at our 100th episode. So thank you so much to Adrian. Thank you so much to you for tuning in, and do join me again for another episode. Next time I'm going to be joined by Barry Nielsen, OBE from CITB. So all about construction and skills, for another fantastic episode of the Public Eye podcast. Bye-bye. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service, for our team using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.